Welcome to a new episode of DevSecOps Talks with me, Matthias.
Paulina.
Andrei and
So, Paul, nice to be with you all again.
Good to have Paul back on the show, right? And
I think this is my third time.
Yes, your third time.
Yeah,
First,
right.
you were with Palumi, I'm guessing, right?
That's right. Yeah. Then I talked about System Initiative, and then a long time ago. I mean, a lot has changed since then, and then I can again still a System Initiative.
Yeah. Sometimes the voice is a little bit chunky when you talk, so you have to be steady here. But yeah, okay. You first Palumi, and then you were System Initiative, and now you're still with System Initiative, but something
different System Initiative, not what we discussed before.
No, it's a new thing, right?
What changed?
So it's a completely new thing. So System Initiative has been trying to build a tool for the last 5.5 years. Okay, like there have been multiple evolutions of this tool. It started with a visual editor where you could drag and drop and you can make connections between systems. But around last summer, so summer 2025, we basically decided to change how the system worked. It was no longer going to be Sure, it's just fine. You can still see me.
Yeah. So sorry, Paul. Yeah. Maybe we should be. Yeah. Maybe it's better.
Okay. Yeah. So it's fine. So basically, we took a step back from the system and we looked at the fact that visual composition wasn't working as well as people needed it to work. It was a very slow. It was a very cumbersome way to go, and it was, to be quite frank, a little too weird for the ecosystem, in the fact that everyone is so used to code, right? Everyone is used to infrastructure. They're used to seeing artifacts. They're used to being able to review code and see things. So we wanted to have a different way of working. We started being able to create things via an API. So last summer, I spiked a public API. That API was an open API spec API. And then off the back of that, we had a customer who built an MCP server on top of it, right? They had tremendous success. Their MCP server was it was a very early prototype of an MCP server. I want to be nice about it. I'm not going to say it was an MCP server. There was no thought about token usage or no thought about how tools went together to like create like a layer of abstraction. So we actually created our own official MCP server, which plugged in, and we actually launched that with a CLI, right? Now, the customers who used that, they loved it. That loop was fantastic for them. They could iterate very easily from a CLI. They could iterate very easily using Claude Code or an OpenAI tool of their AI agent tool of their choosing, and it was a much better experience.
Yeah, but this was for creating infrastructure, right? It's still System Initiative, but instead of using the drag and drop feature that you had before, now using CLI with the agent help and then MCP server to create the infrastructure.
Exactly correct. Now, it opened up a lot. It opened up a lot of avenues. It opened up the fact that, one, we were able to do migrations from one cloud to the other very easily because the agent could reason about it. It had the typed interfaces. It had the models that it worked with. Our models were based very clearly on, AWS was based on CloudFormation and Cloud Control API. Azure was based on the Azure REST API specs. The Google model that we started creating was based on the Google Discovery Docs. So, they were very well-trained models that could help a user to be able to really understand what was happening. So we got very good results on it. Now, around Christmas time, Christmas 2025, we started realizing that the future of what System Initiative was not going to be a SaaS-based tool, right? It was not going to be that original platform that we had created, because we were moving into a new world where AI agent plus CLI was given such good results, but we were carrying the baggage of an entire distributed system with hundreds of thousands of lines of Rust code and multiple services coming together and being able to see what happens. So in January, we took mid-January, the company took the decision that we needed to take a step back, rethink what we were actually doing. Oh, good job.
Jump in here. And,
yeah, please do.
We actually we had a chat with Paul, like a private chat, when he got that cloud code integration working. We had a little bit of private conversation when he showed it to me. If you guys remember, during our last recording when we discussed it, and Paul was all excitedly talking about the system initiative and how it looked, and like we've been questioning if they're building the new UI for AWS, like the better AWS console experience.
Yeah.
But I think then when he showed me what he had with the cloud code, that I felt that the system initiative was in the right place, in the right time, since what they had, what they basically built, if I even step back if I take another step back. So imagine like you're running the cloud code, you're running your agent locally and you want to do infrastructure change. What avenues you have? So you could use, for instance, AWS CLI, and it can operate AWS CLI and do changes, which is unpredictable, and that's the same as you are clicking in the console pretty much. It's a click swap, but done by the agent in the terminal. So that's not what really it's not repeatable. We don't want to have that. And another problem with the models that's underlying technology under the agents is that they're non-deterministic. So the agent can do it this way today, that way another day. So you just cannot ask agent to repeat the same in production because it might do another thing.
Yeah.
Like for instance, if you are over your context window, it starts to forget what it did before, and then it will start to improvise. So that's like a typical problem. You can try running Terraform, kind of like repeating the same loop that the person is doing. That's another possibility, but that was built for a different type of paradigm, right? And with this MCP server and system initiative built in to the cloud code agentic loop, we got the possibility to actually have repeatability and guardrails that agent needs to produce something that will be repeatable, plus keeping the human in the loop. Because my understanding was that the agent will generate system initiative spec that we're about to apply, and then the human is able to review that spec before applying it. So, and that was quite powerful. So it took a lot of toil from the person producing the spec, and then the system initiative was finishing it up, driving it through. Was my understanding correct, Paul?
You couldn't have given me a better marketing summary of what the actual system was, which is perfect, right? Because that's exactly what it was. It was this agentic loop that worked really well with the human in the loop, okay? Because that's what we found was the best loop, right? Because AI tools, they're wonderful. They'll do a lot, but they're kind of weird at the same time because they don't have the same understanding of systems as we do. They'll do the reasoning and they'll come up with their own sort of thought process of how to get there. But if you prompt them in the right direction, it was really good. Now, there was a little extra that sort of happened here as well, in the fact of an MCP server, oh my God, if you do not give your MCP server the love and attention that it needs, you just burn tokens on behalf of a user, and that costs a user an incredible amount of money. Okay, now when you have a SaaS or a central hosted API and you're pushing data back and forward to the user in the hope that it's the right data for the user, I spent 3 weeks in December building the MCP server in a second way that reduced the token cost, that you progressive reveal and a huge amount of documentation. And the level of effort it takes for that for MCP was just absolutely incredible. And we sort of went, you know what, maybe MCP is in the right direction for us, because you need to be able to feed the AI agent as much context as it actually needs. So storing all this data in an API and trying to transverse that data up and down through API calls is going to be expensive regardless of whatever you do. So we started looking at a different way to do it. So The new way at System Initiative now is a CLI-based tool. Okay, the CLI-based tool, it's called SWAMP. Okay, SWAMP. It's kind of a funny name. It didn't start like that was going to be the name. There's 5 people left at System Initiative. The rest of the company, unfortunately, left us just because we had to rethink what the company was and what the tool was going to be. And, you know, when you have a team of 17 people or a company of 17 people and we don't actually know what the tool is going to be, keeping all of those people around, A, is not fair on them. B, it's not good for their career development. And C, of course, as you can imagine, it costs money when you don't actually know what the outcome that you're going to get. So, you know, we kept the CEO stayed, the VP of Biz Dev stayed because we needed to come up with a new product. The COO stayed. And then we kept myself, who ran products, and the head of infrastructure, who was our primary user of System Initiative. He pushed so many feature requests because he was actually using System Initiative to build System Initiative. So we kept us together as a core of people, and we got together mid-January, talked about what worked really well with System Initiative, what didn't work really well with the tool. Like, we talked about that agentic loop, and we said, you know what, let's try this tool. Let's try building this prototype. And the 5 people, their initials make up the word SWAMP. So we've kind of kept it. We've lent into it because, you know, we didn't intend that to be the case. We didn't intend that to be the actual name, but it's kind of stuck, and it's kind of like endearing because you have a bunch of data that like is all thrown together, and that data is useful for an AI agent. And that data is not a data lake. It's not pretty. It's not like well formatted. It's built in a way where the agent can actually do it. So we kind of say the data is in a swamp. And then the AI agent is able to pull the data out of the swamp.
But Paul, how do you feel that you ended up in the last letter here in the name?
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that because if they ever take away P, it's going to be swamp. So you can never drop the P from swamp, and I'm good with that. So even if I leave the company, I'll still be included in that name.
Yeah.
But
tell us more about the tool. So I figured it's like open source, right?
It's completely open source. It's AGPL v3, and I'll talk about the reason why that is in a little bit. So basically, the way to think about Swamp is it's a local tool, okay, that sort of works with an AI agent. Okay, now it's kind of general purpose. Okay, that's the most important part here. It's not targeted specifically infrastructure, or it's not targeting specific like APIs or whatever. It's a general purpose tool that allows you to automate. Okay, so if we think of when we asked Claude or Copilot or Codex or any of these tools to like, you know, describe me or change my AWS infrastructure or stuff like that, right? It understands the reasoning, and then it tries to shell out to tools like the CLI or make raw curl commands, or, you know, it doesn't really have the structure that you actually need to do it. So what Swamp is, it's like Swamp is kind of the system that works together, like to keep the AI agent on guardrails. So for us, it's like type models. Okay, you don't like have bash scripts around. Like, these type models have schemas, they have explicit inputs, outputs, they have methods on them. Those methods are not what we class as traditional infrastructure as code methods, where it's like create, delete, update, and read. You can actually have a method that says analyze, or you can have a method that says do X. And all of the logic that you need to perform the task is inside that method, right? So it's not what we would class as declarative in any way, shape, or form. It is very much an imperative model that allows you to be able to chain operations together to automate something, right? So a perfect example here is my colleague, Nick Steinmetz. He actually has been using Swamp since literally the first build that we came out, okay? And he has a local server infrastructure in his house, and he has Proxmox, okay, which is like a VM system running on it, okay? He actually has Swamp fully managing his Proxmox setup. It is like able to create VMs, start VMs, it's able to interact with VMs, it's able to inspect like the whole of the hypervisor to be able to like report on, you know, versions of the VM that's running, its utilization, its understanding. And he actually just this week, he actually hooked it up to Discord because he has a bunch of friends in Discord that use these servers for like Minecraft servers and gaming servers. So they can actually run a command like bang swamp, like create VM, and it's actually able to go and like create those VMs using, you know, the automation and the guardrails that's there. So, you know, it's an incredibly general purpose tool that the AI agent sort of works with. And when you interact with Claude, like we have built an array of skills in Claude that when you actually install Swamp locally, Claude is actually able to talk to those skills to understand how to create the models, how to create the workflows, how to create the reusableness of the system. And we've built it in a way where it's extremely extensible, okay? In System Initiative, we used to say it was extensible. It was not extensible. Okay, when we look back on it and we take retrospect, sure, you could go and write the code yourself. I mean, that's a lot of overhead to write the code. We have explicitly shipped Swamp with 0 models built in. And when I say a model, I mean schema. So like an AWS EC2 instance or a VPC or a Google instance, we have shipped with 0 built in, okay? Because we have taught the AI agent using skills to be able to create those schemas incredibly easily, incredibly simply. So we had a customer of ours or a user of ours came into Discord this morning, like Friday the 20th of February, and he said, I just asked Swamp to create the schema that allows me to create a Let's Encrypt server, a Let's Encrypt server certificate, and it just did it first time. He didn't have to write any code. It created the model and the methods and the interactions to be able to do it. So that's the type of tool that we've actually built at this moment in
time. Let me stop you. I wanna
Please.
give the word to Paulina.
How do you monetize it? Because I think the tool is very interesting and I have some questions to it as well, but how do you monetize it if you keep it open source?
So there's a bunch of different ways that you can do this. If you think back to how Docker like originally like deployed Docker, okay, where they created this Docker hub and people could upload the Docker the Docker files or the images, you could go a similar way, okay? We could have people who can supply paid for models that would pay like us to be able to build them, or we would work with the customer to be able to do it, and they could pay a sum to be able to download specific models, or they could build them themselves. You know, there's like a whole community angle play here where you can have each person can upload their own version of an EC2 instance, but that System Initiative has a declarative, you know, supported, well-maintained, paid-for version of an EC2 instance model. So there's a bunch of different ways that we can actually do this. I'll be 100% honest with you. That has not been the focus that we've actually given like at this moment in time, because what we wanted to do is we wanted to come up with a tool that actually resonated correctly with users. And then the monetization strategy was like, it's an easier play when you actually understand that a user like cares and a user understands it, and a user can, you know, companies can launch their own like models off the back of it. They can launch their own workflows, which are tried and tested. TerraGrunt were incredibly successful with this in the Terraform ecosystem, where they had like supplied modules, you know, supplied workflows that work really well that people can actually do. There's a similar thing that you can actually do off the back of this.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess in this new age of AI, like with all the SaaS going to hell, I guess the pricing and how we monetize, and also like open source, right? So we used to have like open source projects. Now everyone can build their own Terraform if they really want to.
So this is it.
Like this it will just take a little bit of time, but still it's like doable.
100%, right? So this is the whole thing. There is no longer a moat in software. Okay, and what I mean by that is you don't have like this inherent technology that people can not copy, or that they don't have the setup to be able to build, or the size of the team to be able to do it. If somebody doesn't like a tool today, they'll create their own, honestly. So what we've actually tried to do at Swamp is we've tried to create a technology that's incredibly extensible, that people can create their own schemas, their own workflows, that they don't need system initiative to maintain those. We don't need to be the keepers of the code. We don't need to be the keepers of this schemas. We want people, we would rather that people actually use the tool in the correct way rather than having to go, I don't like how this specific thing works. And because I have all these models, I just want to go and copy it. We want them to be able to create this and extend it themselves, which is why it's been built in this way, and it's been built with the an open source license with AGPL v3. What we've actually done, we're fully in on AI here. Okay, we don't write a single line of code in Swamp. Okay, the entire repository has been auto-generated with code.
Paul, let me stop here. We will jump there, like the AI development. We will cover that as well. But I want to still understand the tool itself in more details. So what we've been covering so far, like we're going to use Cloud Code as an example, because everyone seems to be obsessed with it nowadays. So with the Cloud Code, which is like the general agent that you run on your laptop, it can run the shell commands and use whatever the command line tools you have. But then you might have some specific things you wanted to do, like which might be specific to your environment. Maybe like you build internal tooling that you wanted to run, or you do things in some special way. But then you create the skills, and skill is basically it's a fancy name for the markdown file that agent can load in a runtime and learn from it how you do things. So if you have like internal tool, then like when you mention it, and if you have a skill installed, then and like installing skill, it's a fancy way of saying copying someone else's markdown file. Then it will load that tool into the context. It will load that markdown file into the context, and then you'll be able to know how you want to do things. Another thing that comes together with the skills is like a shell script. You can also distribute shell scripts. So if you don't want the agent to stumble through the commands every time and again, it's much faster to build a script and let agent to run the script, and they can distribute. And then the skill itself will tell how to use the script. So then there is another concept in an agentic world, is like tools, right? So you have like a bash tool. Like when agent run bash, it's actually using the tool that's allowing it to run bash, and then it gets the output back, analyzes the output, and decides on the next step. How does Swamp fit into that? So like,
okay, great question.
Is it a tool? I hear it's not.
Yeah, it's not, right? So I get asked this at least once per day. Okay, people firstly ask me, why not just use Claude or ChatGPT directly? What is Swamp in comparison to those things? So there's a couple of different things to pull out here. Okay, so it's not an AI wrapper. Okay, it's not a chatbot. Okay, it is actually a structured interface that helps make AI agents reliable in their context. Okay, now that's the important thing here at this moment in time. Okay, because AI is a great reason. It's wonderful research. It's able to give you the answers it needs, but you have to give it the tools to actually work within the confines of what you need. If you don't give it the prompting or the tools that you need in order to do it, it's going to go off and make some very questionable decisions. Okay, very questionable decisions. Okay, but Swamp is the architecture that it sort of operates with. Okay, so for us, we have two concepts. We have models. Okay, you can think of models as a schema, and you have workflows. Okay, workflows are actually how it interacts with the real world. Okay, when I say the real world, maybe it's an API, maybe it's a CLI, maybe it's whatever sort of tool or engine that you need it to interact with. Okay, and what we've actually built is that the skills give us the guidelines, and it gives Claude the guidelines to be able to build the automation to talk to the systems that you need to talk to using the models and using the workflows. And if you don't have the model built in, it understands the structure of how to build a new model to be able to work within that guideline.
Are you saying you have something like N8N for CLI? Like the workflow engine? Okay,
so we
like the
have built a
for CLI.
We have built a workflow engine. There is workflows built in. You can run workflows. You can get the data out. workflows can be multi-environment, they can be broken down by a tag, they can be like data outputs can be saved in multiple ways. We have used an expression language that you can actually reference across workflows. You can have workflows trigger other workflows. We have built a workflow engine using Swamp. Swamp is the driver of that engine. And we have created the skills that allow Claude to be able to build those workflows incredibly easy just from plain text.
Okay, then basically you have CLI Jenkins, where the jobs is like basically agents. So you orchestrate agents. So like it's like agent orchestration thing where you have fixed inputs and outputs to the every node and stuff like that.
Yeah. And you can evaluate them, so you can see what it's going to do up front. You can actually, even if there's cell expressions is the way that you would be able to chain data in like Kubernetes API declarations, where you have like a dot notation to be able to reference different parts of your system or different like other CRDs or other like different tools. So we've actually been able to create this complex language that allows you to be able to chain these models together. So I'm going to give you a very rudimentary example, okay, where you need a VPC and you need two subnets. The way that you would actually do it is you would have a model for a VPC and you have a model for a subnet. And then you would actually, in your workflow, you would say the first step in the workflow is create the VPC. And then the input into the models for the subnet is vpc.resource.attributes.vpc-id. So it's like a fully typed model that allows you to be able to pass data in and out of the system. And that's something that worked well in System Initiative, where you had this model that had data and data was structured. And that data allowed you to be able to see what was happening. So it made it a little easier to reason with.
Right. So that would be like a hello world example, right? So if I would have
totally
Terraform, because I think that's what people usually operate in their mind. So they would have like main.tf, there they would have VPC resource, and then they would have like subnet that depends on the VPC resource. Here you would also have a file, but that describes the model you use and the inputs and outputs between them. And then when you run the Swamp that would actually call the APIs.
Yes, that's exactly right. Now, of course, as I said, that's the most basic example I can give you. In the example where we're talking about Proxmox, like the workflow here would be interrogate the system, understand what VMs are there. Does the VM that you want actually exist? If it doesn't, create the VM, then start the VM, then actually wait for the VM to be initialized, SSH in, set up the agents that you need, set up the tools that you need, and then the VM is finalized. So, it's not just talking and creating the infrastructure. You can go into the infrastructure and do the things that you need, a la Ansible, a la Terraform, local provisioners, null provisioners, all exact tools. It sort of brings all of these pieces together. Now, somebody asked me 2 days ago, can I just get this to shell out to Terraform and create Terraform? Absolutely. If that's what you wanted it to do, that would work totally fine as well, because for us, it doesn't matter. For us, we're creating the model, the typed system that sort of it then interacts with. And I have tested it. I did it live on Discord on a call last week where I built an infrastructure in Swamp. And then I told it to generate the Terraform configuration for it. And it did it incredibly well. It created all the relationships between it because I had the model that the AI agent was able to work within the confines of to be able to do the right thing that it needed, to be able to make the right reasoning and the right decisions.
Right. So it's basically AI agent, like Claude or whatever, would read the model that is like strictly defined, and then will be able to output Terraform out of it.
Exactly.
That's how.
Exactly.
So the AI basically is calling the orchestration.
Exactly correct. And the interesting thing is that you can run this in different ways. Okay, you can run it in YOLO mode if you really want to, and you can get Claude to run the workflows for you. I would not suggest that is actually the right thing to do. What I do personally, and again, this is personal taste and different people will have different ways, is I use Claude to generate the workflows and the models for me. all of that gets checked into Git. And then I can use whatever run, whether it's GitHub Actions or myself at a time at which convenient. I can then run the correct model, the correct workflow that I need using the correct environments. I'm in full control of when things happen.
But sorry if I'm stupid question here, but I use the agent and then I create like the workflow. Say that I have EC2 server. Log into my server, install Grafana and Prometheus on this server, then verify that I get alerts in Grafana, and that would be like a workflow file, right? So I take the agent to create that file, and then I can run that workflow to copy the same like actions multiple times.
Absolutely correct. So models and workflows take inputs, and those inputs you can use to be able to create the repeatable pattern that allows you to be able to do it. So it's not like you get one workflow and then you have to create another copy of the workflow. The workflows are completely reusable, which means that you can pass in the different inputs in that makes it work and for repeatable. Exactly correct. Exactly correct.
So then I can build up. It's like a Docker build images, right? You start with one and then you can add multiple layers, like blah blah blah. In the end, you have the full build.
Exactly, and that's exactly how it starts. So you would create a model, that model does a job, then you would hook that into a workflow, and then you're like, hey, I need to create this as a repeatable model. But of course, Claude is helping you, or whatever AI agent tool that you need, because it has the skills, it has the strict confines of the architecture to work within, and it can actually be able to build it. I actually created just last night. I created a reusable environment workflow, and I put it on my GitHub, and I have a full reasoning breakdown of like how it works with multi-environment and the different ways that you can do it. I'll drop it in the chat if you want to share that with listeners, then like by all means do, but it is a great breakdown of the types of things that you can do with it using a very simple example.
But this is where like it gets tricky for me, like because you're using the agent to create a workflow that the agent will use to implement the infrastructure, right? Like 3 months ago, then you created the workflow like manually in whatever tool you use, and then you apply it. But now the agent is creating the workflow that the agent then later will apply as well to the infrastructure. I think it's hard for me that I'm old to keep track on all this stuff.
This is the thing, right? The agent doesn't need to apply the workflow. Okay, I still truly believe in the agent or person in the loop. Okay, human in the loop is really important in AI because we hold a lot more context of our system. We hold a lot more understanding of our architecture. So even though the agent is creating the workflows, I am actually the one that runs the work. Okay, so I actually have my local Claude setup that has a permission denied on workflow run because I do not want Claude to run the workflow on my behalf. I want to know when it's running, what it's doing. I want to be able to review what it's doing first. And I can check that into GitHub so that my peers can also review that workflow before it goes and interacts with production, because that's the important thing, right? I don't want it to just go and YOLO stuff. I need to know what's going to happen and when it's going to happen, because in the ops world, that's what we care about. That's what we have compliance story around. That's what we have, so many things that we have to operate within, especially when we have production infrastructure, that it's really important that that's the way it works. But it's the same CLI. That's the important thing, right? Whether you run the CLI command or Claude runs the CLI command, it doesn't matter. It's just when you run it is the important thing. It's at a time of your choosing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it's like general automation workflow runner thingy and builder.
That's exactly what it is.
What if workflow is changing? Do we need to
say again, Polina? I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, if the workflow is slightly changing, because you said we can reuse the same workflows if, for repeatable tasks, and we can create out of cloud the workflow which needs to get repeated. What if this workflow, which needs to get repeated, we need to slightly change? Do we create a new workflow, or can we reuse one which already exists?
You can totally reuse one that already exists, because you can embed input parameters as part of that workflow, that when you try and run it from the CLI and those parameters are required, it's going to go, hey, I don't have the parameters to be able to run this. I don't know what I have to use it against. So it's effectively code, right? Which means that you can refactor as you need to. You can make it as complex or as simple as you need to. You can even break it out into different workflows, right? If your workflow starts to become huge and unmanageable, you can have a workflow that orchestrates other workflows and then collects the results, much like how you would have a GitHub action that calls other GitHub actions, waits, and has success conditions and triggers between them. You can do a very similar thing with Swamp workflows.
Cool. And cool.
Wow, how is this different from the general build system, like for instance Gradle and stuff?
How is it different from Gradle? I mean,
because in Gradle, yeah.
So the interesting thing here is a lot of these tools were built at a time for humans to write, humans to review, and humans to actually debate about. So, basically, I'm going to give Terraform as an example, right? And you can imagine the same thing in your head, right? So Terraform modules, Terraform resources, probably the most debated, the most talked about pieces that's there. The Terraform AWS VPC module, written by Anton Babenko, is without doubt one of the best Terraform modules that there is in existence. So there is something in the region of 237 different inputs that can go to make different code and different tools. A lot of the internals of that module are stylistic. They're determined by Anton or by the team of maintainers, and it's kind of written in a way where it's written with a point of view in mind that is reviewable by a user. It's written by it has to be reviewable by teams that are using it. What we've tried to do here is we've tried to take a step back and think about building a tool that is designed for an AI agent to be able to inspect. It doesn't matter, sure, you as a person need to be able to look at the workflow and understand what it's going to do. But what we actually care about as much as anything else is the tool needs to be able to operate within the confines of an AI agent. And that we know that the best way that an agent works is by feeding it the context that it needs, the history of the decisions, the changes that have happened over time. So that's kind of why we have this data directory called a Swamp. So sure, Gradle is a general purpose build system for it, but Gradle or Terraform or all of these tools don't have the artifact outputs that help you reason about the changes that have been made over time. They're kind of one-off runs. You have to collect those runs in another place, whether it's in your GitHub Actions or whether it's in your Gradle build server or whatever, and you have to be able to try and feed all that information in. You have to be able to reason about what that information looks like for the AI agent. We've actually built that with the AI agent in mind. The AI agent understands the structure. It understands the history. You can actually interrogate the system and say, can you show me what has happened in this workflow across the last 5 days? And it has the data there and then within Claude, within this directory, within this system, that it can give you the answers to help you see what has happened and why it has happened.
Let me come on it from another end. I understand the technology play. Technologically it makes sense, but looking from the what problem we are trying to solve question perspective, if I take the typical practitioner, for instance, we take Paulina, who needs to build or maintain infrastructure for the customers. That's what Paulina does, I guess, in her consulting work. what problem that would solve for the Paulina or like the person who is responsible for the infrastructure? Well, where does it slot in? Where are the efficiency gains, and why people should drop what they're doing and start doing the Swamp P?
So there's a couple of different things here, right? I want to note a couple of different pieces. So I would not say that Swamp is a better IAC tool. Okay, I'm not saying that Swamp is a better Terraform or Swamp is a better Pulumi. That is not the case in any way, shape, or form. Swamp is looking at something in a different angle completely. It's a similar outcome where you get infrastructure out the back of it, but it's designed with different assumptions for who is doing the work. Okay, that's a really important distinction here. In the Terraform world, in the Pulumi world, in CloudFormation world, CDK world, whatever, okay, we know that the results that we get with AI is varied. Okay, like we don't always get wonderful results because of them, because there are too many things that happen together as part of what's going on. What I mean by that is you need to understand the version of Terraform. You need to understand the version of the module that you're using. You need to understand the structure of the modules. You need to understand all these different pieces. So the system is kind of, to be able to, like, for an AI to be able to operate within that way, you're not going to get wonderful results. What we've designed Swamp to do is to work with AI in a huge way. What I mean by that is as follows. Software development is changing hugely. Okay, you could do an entire conversation about what that means for the world and what that means for software. But what is happening at this moment in time is the productivity gains in software is going through the roof. And unfortunately, it's starting to show that the ops teams are going to become the bottlenecks that we once were. Okay, we had the similar thing when we moved from physical servers to cloud. We had the same thing when we moved from cloud to IAC, where we had these tools that changed the game for what we were actually doing. It allowed us to be able to move faster and embrace technology in a different way. That's what we're trying to do. I
actually have a counter argument here.
Please go for it.
I do agree that we have increasing speed in development. I do agree that. So like developers now are able to build way faster than before. And I do agree with your statement that they need to ship as well. So like they don't want to have infrastructure team standing in front of them, like, and stopping their dead in their tracks because they're not ready to deploy what they're building. Because like now the velocity of the output the development team is doing is much higher compared to what infrastructure team can handle if they work in old ways. So infrastructure team needs to change. I agree with that. We potentially need a different tooling. I agree with that. But in my experience, and we spoke in a pre-show about that, and I think we need to do another episode dedicated to like how we develop with AI today, because like I'm also spending the day and night burning tokens, as you said, on the different projects. So the only thing that basically is stopping me from like fully automate development process right now is actually testing. It's not like I'm not reaching the deployment phase just yet. Because like what you really need to have, like I can have the agent, like I have an idea, I have the workflow where I drop it, it will be analyzed, it will be designed, it will be planned, it will be implemented, I get a pull request. All of that could happen automatically. But then I need to close the gap with the testing. And that's really the bottleneck right now. Like you need to spend time. Like if you have end-to-end tests and like if you have advanced testing setup, you are golden because you can fall back on that, and that will kind of keep everything aligned. But if you don't have as much test, you really need to spend time on building test harness, and then only you get to the deployment part.
Yeah, I agree with you totally. Like honestly, and the whole thing right now is to peel away the layers that are causing us like to be able to be slow. Okay, if I can peel away the layer, that means I don't need to write 100 models to support my specific use case or my workflow within my infrastructure, and I can spend the time actually building a specific test harness that's going to be able to do it better. I'm going to do that. Okay, And that's what we're trying to do with Swamp. We're trying to create this ability where people can actually spend the time where they need to spend the time rather than trying to fight with stylistic changes, laying out files on disk, like choosing naming conventions. Like if you give an AI agent really strict guidelines, it's going to stay within those guidelines and it's going to make a really good job of that. And that's kind of exactly what we're trying to do.
Oh, great. So 45 minutes, people.
Yeah.
Maybe we should reset here, and maybe we can ask Paul to come back and talk about how they build this tool with agent.
I think that would be valuable, yes. And it's really good to have Paul. Like each time we do quite a bit of mental gymnastics and having the new, fresh perspective on the way we do our work. So it's much appreciated, Paul.
I mean, there's one key thing to take away here, right? So this is, if you have an entire setup of Terraform that you've created over time, and like you don't need to throw that away, like for Swamp to be providing value. Okay, you absolutely do not. You can plug Swamp in today alongside that infrastructure, and you can use Swamp to be able to ask questions of your infrastructure to help you validate what your current IAC does. Okay, this is not a replacement where you'll just go and throw away years and years of work. This is about allowing you to be able to expand the bounds of what you're trying to do and be able to do it in a much more reasoned context. And the one thing I want people to realize here is that the extensibility allows that to happen. You're in control of when things happen. You're in control of writing the models to be able to do it. It'll work within the tools that you need. And that's the interesting thing about where we're going here.
Amazing. Yeah, I would love to have another episode where we can compare the blueprints about how we build software, because you told us that the Swamp is pretty much built with AI, so you're not writing the code any longer.
I haven't written a single line of code in 4 weeks. Like I literally have. I have 4 machines churning out plans and churning out like even customer requests. There's a whole play about open source and in the AI world about supply chain. Talk about them as well. So absolutely, I'm happy to do that.
Let's have that one. I would let Matthias schedule it, and but we should wrap for today. And it was a pleasure, Paul. Thank you for coming.
You have been listened to DevSecOps Talks with Matthias, Andre, and Paulina. For notes and information, please visit devsecops.fm. Thanks for tuning in.